Okay, here we go again. Bench day, Psalm 54. So let's get into some warm ups with 135 and talk about the psalm. It's got a really cool backstory. All right, cool. So today is I think it's the coldest day so far this fall. Like mid 30s. That's kind of cool. And we're gonna carry on with the benching. It just worked out. Yesterday was way colder, but if it had fallen out where today, I would have come out here anyway, I guess. Because why not? I'm a creature of habit. So Psalm 54. So we'll do the backstory real quick. So David, the king, he was running from King Saul twice, and this one group. Well, he wasn't running twice. That didn't make sense at all. He was running from Saul a lot, and twice he was in this area of Israel where these people called the Ziphites lived. They're Israelites too, but they were really loyal to King Saul. And so, two different times they tell Saul, "Hey, we've heard David's hiding out here. There's a lot of remote, desolate kind of areas there, so good place to hide until somebody found out you're hiding, right?" So the first time, David's on a mountain and they're surrounded with Saul and his men. And Saul was just really into killing David for a while there. And right when David's thinking, okay, how are we gonna get out of this one? He gets a messenger that the Philistines had attacked. And so, I mean, as crazy as he was about killing David, I guess he was sane enough to realize I have to go defend my nation from real enemies. So that was the first time. All right. So I'm gonna do another little warm up set here. It's important to get these backstories in because then when we read the psalm, it'll make a lot more sense. Or we know that it's like a specific thing, not just a general, statements he's making, but they're actually about an actual real life thing that happened to him. And just a little bit of songwriting I've done. It's you have your like make believe stories that you're writing about, your I don't know storyteller type songs, and then you might want to write illustratively, poetically about something that really happened. And you know, depending on what the subject matter is, usually real life songs mean a lot more anyway. All right, so backstory part 2. Well, David's for some reason hiding there again. This is all in First Samuel, by the way, toward the end of the book, like in the 20s, like 23 and 26, I think, or something like that. And so Saul's coming to get him, got his army with him because, well, I mean, to be fair, David had he had a little mini army, I guess. I don't know, militia, whatever he had. People that followed him around. You know, he initially was alone, of course, but at this point, starting to have him a. Little group. So here comes Saul, his General Abner, and they're sitting there. I guess they knew about where David was, but it's getting dark. They set up camp. Saul's in the middle, of course. Got the army going around protecting him, and they're all sleeping. And God made sure that they all fell asleep. I don't know if they were guards, exactly how he had that set up, but everybody's out. And David and his guys are standing there. This would be the second time this opportunity situation presented itself, but David's guys, they're like, hey, kill him, And David's like, nah, God's king. I mean, he anointed him to be king. I know he anointed me to be king too, but I'm not going to play God and take advantage of the situation here. Interesting life lesson there for people. That might not be the king you want, but that's the king you got. So, even when you're in a position like David to do something about it, he still didn't do it. Life lesson. So David, like, I know what we'll do. We'll just walk down there in the middle of them and snatch the spear and the water jug, and that's kind of symbolic of survival, fighting, especially in the wilderness, especially that part of the world. You got to have your water. You'll dehydrate. You don't have your weapon. You don't have your water. You're kind of screwed out there. So David stands there and back with his guys and yells at them and, hey, why aren't y'all protecting your king over there? And he was kind of like, look what I got. So Saul kind of got bummed out and just didn't know what to do, so he left. He's like, man, David could have killed me, but he didn't kill me. What's the deal here? And I'm trying to kill him. Oh my God, Ironically, Saul even called David his son. My son David. If you read it, I think it's 1 Samuel 26. And sure enough, in the Hebrew, that actually means son, like a figurative young man kind of sense, like we'd use it. Sometimes now it actually meant like son, because at one point they were that close. Anyway, long story short, that's the backdrop. Saul tried to kill David twice in this wilderness. He was ratted out by the people from that area both times. God brought him out of it both times. And David writes, after whichever one of those times, I couldn't find out. Didn't see any specifics, but the situations happened so close together, I would just assume he wrote it sort of generally after both of those incidents. So yeah, now we'll finally. Oh yeah, maybe I should have put these working weight. Now we'll do that, then we'll actually read it. It's a very short psalm, not very long at all. He was probably in a hurry, trying to escape death. Like, I'll just write a really short song because if I stay in one place too long, I might die. I don't know. There's a lot going on at the time. All right then. That was nice. Felt pretty good. So, what do we got? The actual psalm now. Save me, O God, by thy name, and judge me by thy strength. Hear my prayer, O God. Give ear to the words of my mouth. So now, wow, knowing why he wrote it, what's going on. Both situations, first one in particular, he's on a hill, surrounded. God intervenes, gets the messenger that the Philistines have attacked, so Saul has to leave to defend Israel. Like, do his real job, get off his made up job of trying to kill David and get to the real job, defending Israel. And he says, for strangers are risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. They have not set God before them. Selah. So this whole little first set here, he's crying out to God for help, and kind of tells you why he's calling out to God for help in verse 3. Strangers risen up against me, oppressors seek after my soul. That's two things right there. The strangers could easily be just a reference to the fact that, the Ziphites were, loyal to Saul. So you can say, well, they're strangers for David, or they're not from his tribe, so they're not going to be loyal to him, even though how widespread the knowledge was, maybe, I don't know, that David had been anointed or anything like that. Like, did Saul even really know that, or was he just the paranoia? Because, if you go back even further into 1 Samuel, you'll see that an evil spirit from the Lord, by the way, was troubling him because of his disobedience. Funny, because in the just thought of this, so I should have looked it up, but in the New Testament, even, we're warned about people who turn from God. Maybe they've been around it, seen it. I guess they're not really saved, but they're participating to a certain extent, and then they walk away from it. Talks about being given over to a strong delusion. I know we like to say people are delusional when they don't always exactly think like we do things, but in reality, being delusional is a very serious problem when it's actual, like in Saul's case. This evil spirit, this delusion of this warped view of reality. It's leading him to kill somebody for no reason and spend like government resources, hunting this guy down. So, yeah. And then that last little part, verse 3, they have not set God before them. Obviously, because they're seeking their own ambition, their own power, because if they were really seeking God, then at maybe some level they would have figured out that David is God's anointed. And just in another way of how Israel wasn't supposed to be like the world, think about what the transition could have looked like had Saul embraced David as his successor. That's a thought, right? Because, every other king is trying to establish their legacy, their family name, their bloodline. Well, what would have happened if Saul embraced David as a successor instead of Jonathan? Jonathan, if you go back again and read in 1 Samuel, he knew, he understood, and at least, the rubber never really met the road in that situation because Jonathan was killed fighting the Philistines. But all we see is his loyalty to David and acknowledgement that David was going to be the next king of Israel. So, interesting, I thought there, had God seen fit to let this play out a few times, I wonder if we would have seen every king being a different person from a different tribe, a different bloodline, where God's prophet goes and just anoints another king. And then the current king is like, yes, that's how we're going to do this. I agree. This is God. This isn't a rogue prophet or, whatever. It would have been interesting, to have that because, it would still not really been obedient like God wanted them to be, one nation under God. What a concept. But they were supposed to not have a king in the first place. So, it was just a thought, just a crazy idea I had that, man, what if? What if it could have worked out this way? It might have looked a lot different for at least a few generations. But nope, they wanted a king instead of, they already had God's law. They already had the priests to tell them God's law. They already had the priests and the prophets to pass judgment about God's law, but they didn't want to listen. Read the book of Judges, see that for sure. So, let's do another set and then read some more. It's almost over already. We're like halfway through. Okay. Except, oh yeah, that was nice. All right, let's finish it up here. So he shifts, he's crying out to God. Now he starts basically praising God, being excited. Well, if you think about it, well, when did he exactly write this? I don't think he would have stopped mid battle, so to speak. Like, you know what? Saul's about to kill us. We're surrounded. Let me write a song real quick. Especially because in the notations too, it says it was written on a stringed instrument. Like, I can just imagine. Let me break out my guitar. I feel like a song's coming on right now. Don't worry that we're about to get shot up with arrows or something. I feel like writing a song right now. So I think he's just describing how it was feeling in the moment, and then praising God for what he did. Behold, verse 4, behold, God is mine helper. The Lord is with them that uphold my soul. He shall reward evil unto mine enemies. Cut them off in thy truth. I will freely sacrifice unto thee. I will praise thy name, O Lord, for it is good. For he has delivered me out of all trouble, and mine eye hath seen his desire upon mine enemies. Okay, there's a couple things there that really jump out at me, of course, because I keep harping on this now every time I see it. And yes, I feel like I'm the only one that wants to say this or talk about this, and I know it's not true. It just seems like it. It says in verse 5, he shall reward evil unto my enemies. You know, as if it flies in the face of what we hear today, like, yes, God will deal with evil people sometimes personally and directly, not always through a secondary means. There's primary and secondary causality, and a lot of times God is the secondary. He just allows stuff to happen, and other people and other things are the ones doing it. But when you see it's where God is, or at least here acknowledging that God is this, even if it is secondary cause between this bad thing happening, it's acknowledging God's hand in dealing with the problem. But he ends it with cut them off in thy truth. He's not doing it for any other reason than this is the truth, and this is what we're going to do. The truth. It's all that matters. Obviously, it didn't matter to the enemies. They didn't care. They weren't interested in the truth. And I don't worry too much about this speak the truth in love, sure. But they don't take it the right way doesn't mean you did it wrong. It just means they didn't take it the right way. Look, not everyone's convincible in that moment. You could be talking to somebody about Jesus, about the truth of the Bible, whatever. You might be the first on this long line, or the third, or fifth, or 15th on a line of like 30 people 10 years down the road before that person ever repents. So it's not your job to convince them. That's the Holy Spirit's job. Your job is just tell them the truth in love. And if they don't like it, that doesn't mean you did it wrong. And look, for all you know, that person's never going to repent and believe. That happens too, okay? So don't be so hard on yourself about that kind of stuff. Just speak the truth. That's really the main thing. I mean, Jesus, is the most loving, truthful person there was. They killed him, okay? So it's not your fault because you weren't loving enough. I mean, that's what they try to tell you nowadays. But that's not their end goal. Their end goal is to get you to change and deny the truth to make them happy. That's really what's behind that. So I give no thought to people that tell me I don't speak the truth in love. They have zero credibility with me. It's like this. I'm not going to take criticism from people that I wouldn't take advice from. Just like that. So he goes on, I will freely sacrifice unto thee. I will praise thy name, O Lord, for it is good. Well, yeah, because God keeps helping. God keeps doing. And his response is to sacrifice, to praise. For he has delivered me out of all trouble, and mine eye hath seen his desire upon mine enemies. So I like that. That's interesting. God does have it says in, I can't remember, man, we've done so many Psalms already. I don't remember who got to it yet, where he says, God is angry with the wicked every day. Have we gotten to that one yet? I can't remember. But, the idea that, again, God's only this one-dimensional, hippy-dippy, love everybody kind of God without all the other attributes the Bible tells us he has. Someone ought to make a chart of this. All of God's attributes, like a periodic table or a bar graph or something, and just like how many times each of these attributes is mentioned in the Bible, and maybe some little rundown about, how he applies them in his dealings between holy God and sinful man, and the whole thing. It'd be kind of cool. 10 years from now, maybe I'll have time. I don't know. I'm in the middle of other stuff. But, God's desire on the enemies. God's desire is to punish sin. People don't like that either. But nobody said you had to be the one receiving the punishment. I just don't understand that part. You don't have to receive the punishment receive His mercy and grace instead, you know. But instead, people want to dig their heels in and say God's not like that, or God's not going to do that, or what. It's like, yeah, well, hide and watch, son. So go out and have a good day if you want to.